Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to demonstrate to the listening public this government's pledge to foster economic development and diversification in Bermuda. I tabled a motion earlier this morning in this Honorable House to approve the lease agreement between the Bermuda Land Management Corporation and Seagrass Services Limited, a local subsidiary of the multinational corporation Google, LLC. Mr. Speaker, honorable members may recall in September 2023, Google announced a commitment to invest in Bermuda by installing the Nuvem cable, a new transatlantic subsea cable system to connect Portugal, Bermuda, and the United States. It is intended that the Nuvem will improve network resiliency across the Atlantic, help meet the growing demand for digital services, and add international route diversity to support the development of information and communications technology infrastructure for the continents and countries involved. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to say that Bermuda will play an integral role by hosting a significant cable station to enable multiple cable landings. However, it is more than a cable landing just passing through the island. It will provide a backbone for a wider strategy of a digital port with all the requirements for supporting data and digital infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, in November 2023, by way of a letter of interest, Google indicated its desire to acquire property measuring a total area of 5.9 acres, originally owned by the government of Bermuda and leased to the former Bermuda Land Development Company Limited, located at Burrows Hill between Stocks Road and Hall Street, Southside, St. George's Parish. For clarity, this area is currently the remote control car park in St. David's. In November 23 as well, the then BLDC, the government, and Google began negotiations. Evaluation of the property was conducted by the Bermuda Realty Company Limited, which indicated that the likely market value of the freehold interest in the property was $4,650,000, or $825,000 per acre. After considerable due diligence, Mr. Speaker, and as a demonstration of good faith by all parties involved, an agreement in principle has been made for the site at Burrows Hill. Mr. Speaker, it has been agreed in principle that a lease of 262 years will be held between Seagrass Services Limited, a Google local subsidiary, and the newly established Bermuda Land Management Corporation for the sum of $4,867,500. Honorable members are reminded that BLMC is a singular entity established resulting from the merger of the BLDC and the West End Development Corporation. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, after further negotiations with Google, BLMC management, and the tenants of the RC car track, as a result of the agreement, the current track location will be moved to another site. A planning application will soon be submitted for a new RC car track, and all works will be funded entirely by Google. Mr. Speaker, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry, whether for laying their own cables or leasing from Google. There have already been inquiries from other major companies into building data centers in Bermuda. The successful agreement for this lease will deliver on the government's economic development commitments outlined in its 2020 election manifesto, FinTech, and the National Space Strategy by creating the infrastructure which supports a technology hub. Mr. Speaker, in addition to the land leasing and physical development of a large cable landing station, there are a number of other expected benefits to Bermuda with the landing of the Nuvem cable, including employment for positions needed on an ongoing basis for the cable landing station, creating the infrastructure which supports 1, a technology hub for FinTech, and 2, increased satellite earth stations, Communication satellite earth stations are already either set up in Bermuda or showing increased interest in placing additional earth stations here. Increasing investment in renewable energy. The cable landing station will need between 600 kilowatts and 3 megawatts per annum of electricity over time as the cables ramp up, providing access to Google's significant resource support, including A, training opportunities to Bermudians by giving them access to Google's training platform, B, providing support and advice for other sustainability projects and marine-related initiatives, including providing technology for monitoring and enforcement, and C, supporting Bermuda's education initiatives and community development opportunities. I'd like to take this time to thank all parties involved for making this happen, in particular, the Honorable Walter H. Roban, Minister of Home Affairs, Ms. Razi Azar, the former Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Home Affairs, Solicitor General Mrs. Shakira Dill Francois, and Senior Crown Counsel Specialist Ms. Chantal Bailey of the Attorney General's Chambers, Mr. Andrew Diaz, the COO of Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the Board of the Bermuda Land Management Corporation, the Board of the former Bermuda Land Development Company, Mr. Jerome Wilson, Partner and Head of Technology and Innovation, and Mr. Neil Molyneux, Senior Associate at Property Team of Appleby Global Services, and Ms. Fiona Beck, formerly of the Bermuda Business Development Agency, and now a consultant with Google, all of whom were instrumental in bringing this matter to its conclusion. We are most appreciative of their efforts. Mr. Speaker, this agreement demonstrates Bermuda's vitality for innovation and importance on a global scale. As I have stated before, it is intended for this agreement to act as a magnet, drawing other players in the communication industry to Bermuda. I'm pleased to say that this is precisely the scenario envisioned when the Submarine Communication Cables Act 2020 was developed under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Bermuda has a well-established reputation for creating sound regulatory policy, and this serves as yet another example of our forward-thinking approach. Mr. Speaker, we hope that this agreement sets the foundation for even bigger and better things to come. We welcome Google's proposed investment in Bermuda and look forward to a long and productive relationship with them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.